Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, South Africa's day of anti-immigration marches, set as a deadline by organisers, is thankfully a far more calm affair than many had feared. Thousands turned up, frustrated about a cost of living crisis they blame on foreigners, sentiments that many say scapegoats outsiders for Pretoria's shortcomings. Also, rescue services in Ghana are still racing to manage severe flooding that's cost at least a dozen lives. It's some of the highest rainfall in years, but the president says it's down to climate change. Public health NGOs say that's not a surprise and more should have been already done to prepare. And mental health workers in Kenya try to get more men to take their psychological well-being more seriously. It can be an uphill battle, but small things can be powerful. And in the country's largest psychiatric hospital, we meet one former patient helping others by offering grooming sessions. But first, tens of thousands of people marched on Tuesday across South Africa demanding that immigration rules change and undocumented foreigners leave. Thankfully, the June 30th deadline that organisers of a months-long, sometimes violent, xenophobic campaign gave for immigrants to leave turned out to be a far calmer rally than some had feared. Clashes in the weeks running up to the day cost at least 4 lives, and tens of thousands of migrants fled in fear of their safety. Our team says police are still on high alert. Eunice Masson reports from Cape Town.
Outside the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, dozens of protesters have gathered in support of the anti-immigration mobilization that was set for today in South Africa. The support, however, is less significant than expected, not only in the Western Cape, but also in the Free State and in Northwest. However, the message from the protesters is clear.
Our message today is the usual message that we used to say. All the illegal agreements, migrants must go away in our country.
Our people are suffering because of these illegal foreigners. You can go anywhere here in this province. From the construction, restaurant, hotel, it's the same thing. Our people are not working. And we see that it doesn't matter if you are illegal or not. But the fact remains is that our people are not working.
The problem that South Africa is facing is complex, with many saying that the local election that is later this year in November is a strong driving force for these protests. The government has made promises since these protests started, saying that they will act, they will improve services, they will improve the immigration policy and border management to prevent thousands of undocumented foreign nationals in the country. However, those promises must be met. Marchers here today say that they will march until the 4th of November, should these promises not be kept.
Eunice Masson there for us. Now, rescue services in Ghana's capital are still racing to manage the fallout from severe flooding there. Accra and other parts of the country have been inundated after some of the highest rainfall in years caused a crisis that the fire service says has cost at least 12 lives. Accra floods regularly during the raining season, but President John Mahama said that the scale of the current downpours are being driven by climate change and it is beyond the government's control. Now, it sent in the army and police to help and released emergency money to try and support relief efforts.
A total amount of 350 million is being targeted to be used to help in dealing with the challenges that we have. Mr. Speaker, the President has instructed that 200 million will be targeting relief items to this close to over 10,000 households that have been affected across the whole coast. And the 150 will be used to mitigate the flood issues within this, the coastal area.
Now, seeing that the extreme weather is not a one-off, the NGO WaterAid's amongst some observers who are pushing for leaders to be more proactive in taking the public health dangers posed by climate change seriously and planning accordingly. Now, Arabna Yani Akafori's WaterAid's country director in Ghana, she joins me now. Thank you so much for making the time, Arabna. Now, we heard Mahama acknowledge the role that climate change is playing in the increasingly intense rainfall that Ghana is seeing. It's been something that's been flagged by climate activists for a long time. But is this still a tenuous link there? I mean, have you personally seen changes to weather in Accra, where you've apparently lived your entire life, over the time that you've been in the Ghanaian capital?
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed. Our president is right. Across West Africa, we see climate change showing up at both extremes: too much water through floods or too little through drought. And what is happening in Accra is a stark reminder that the climate crisis is a water crisis. The last time I experienced such severe flooding was in June 2015, which we saw over 150 lives being lost. And approximately about 140 millimeters of rain fell in Accra yesterday. In comparison, we understand that last year the highest is 56 millimeters. So the volume of rainfall we are experiencing today is much, much, much higher. And unfortunately, we are learning that over 38,000 people have been displaced, 12 lives have been lost, and 7 people are missing at the moment. It is unfortunate that we go through this incident year on year. And unfortunately, this year is one of the worst I have seen, with the impact on livelihoods and on assets. It's been very devastating.
I mean, the government is doing what it can. I mean, Mohammed says that there's little that they can do in light of something that's driven by climate change. It's pledged money. But you think that authorities should have done more to prepare for this? How so?
Absolutely. Yes, there is the climate change angle, but then there is also the other side. We need better urban planning and stronger water and sanitation infrastructure. These are very critical to keeping us safe. There are 2 critical things that are exacerbating the situation that we are experiencing in Accra. That is poor urban planning. People are constructing houses in wrong location, in waterways, which is impacting, and also people are disposing rubbish in wrong places. We don't have enough investment to ensure we are recycling or managing our waste effectively. This is fundamentally the 2 things that are actually worsening the crisis. And I think that the government, our local government institution, national authorities need to do more. We need to make sure that we are enforcing the bylaws and ensuring that there is no interference when it comes to enforcing of bylaws and regulations, not just in the capital, but across the country. And also there's the responsibility on the citizens as well, to make sure that we do the right thing instead of, disposing refuse haphazardly and also building in the wrong places.
I mean,
so yes, we do have a responsibility as citizens, and the government also needs to do more and invest more.
So when you're talking about behavior change for Ghanaians, that's not going to happen unless there is a reason for them to change their behavior. Do you think that most Ghanaians see this as a priority? And what can they do to push it further up the agenda, both for their leaders and in terms of, what's happening collectively at the grassroots, so that you end up with better outcomes for what appears to be predictable flooding in Ghana year on year?
Yes. Maybe it's because of social media, but for the first time, we are seeing a lot of citizen coverage and bringing to light some of the indiscipline that is happening across the city. But the devastation and the loss of lives, I think it gives us an opportunity to really sit back, and reflect and say and realize that we are not doing enough. We need to put more pressure on the government, because year on year we have seen this happening, and government promising. We have seen flood reliefs, we have seen actions being put in place, but implementation and enforcement has always been weak. And I think that CSOs, citizens, we need to come together and drive some active citizenship and collective action here to really get the government to act and make sure that they are not just talking and making investment, but the quality of investment in ensuring that these things do not happen again, that our regulation around housing, waste management is resilient, and making sure that even if climate change will bring in more rains, we don't have to worsen it through our own behavior.
Thank you so much, Arabna Yanyi Akufori, WaterAid's country director in Ghana, in light of some of the extreme flooding that has claimed at least a dozen lives there. Now we turn to Kenya, where mental health workers are trying to get more men to take their psychological well-being more seriously. Now that can be a huge uphill battle, particularly when people feel that they have to suffer in silence. However, doing small things intentionally is a powerful start. And the country's largest psychiatric referral hospital is welcoming back a former patient who's helping others in their recovery by offering grooming sessions to help them boost their self-esteem. Clarice Fortuné breaks it down for us.
At this Nairobi's psychiatric hospital, patients wait for their turn for fresh haircuts and beard trim. Healthcare workers say personal grooming is more than a cosmetic service.
More often we only think about medication, the psychotherapy, and we tend to overlook the other part, which is personal grooming. And when it comes to mental health, actually one of the very first indication that someone is struggling with their mental health is the decline in personal grooming.
The monthly grooming sessions are organized by Uniquely Gifted, a community-based organization founded by Sheila Lugaliki after her own stay as a psychiatric patient. She says seeing long-term patients go months without a haircut inspired her to return, not as a patient, but as a volunteer.
I saw what the patients were going through. If someone has been admitted for 6 months and yet no one has groomed their hair, how they look really does not reflect how they are feeling. So someone gets that disconnect and they feel kind of neglected. There's that lack of human connection.
Mental health specialists say depression, anxiety, and substance abuse disorders are among the most common conditions affecting men in Kenya. As Men's Mental Health Awareness Month draws to a close, health workers are urging to seek help early. In the meantime, restoring a patient's appearance is about restoring dignity and reminding people living with mental health illness that they are seen and not forgotten.
A quick World Cup watch, and the elephants have been stopped in their tracks. Ivory Coast is out of the World Cup after Norway survived their opponent's equalising comeback on Tuesday to push through a 2-1 victory in Arlington. It was an intense game, and Ivory Coast attack dominated large parts of the first half, but ultimately it wasn't meant to be, with Norway's Erling Haaland delivering an ice-cold finish in the dying moments of the match. Meanwhile, Morocco again has pulled off a stunning World Cup win and eliminated the Netherlands on this week. Now, Morocco knocked the Dutch out in Monterrey on penalties after a 1-1 draw and will have high hopes of emulating their heroics at the 2022 Qatar World Cup, when they became the first Arab and African country to reach the semi-finals. Now, they're set for a last 16 clash with Canada, and supporters couldn't be happier.
Honestly, the penalty shootout and the tension of the match were difficult to manage. It reminded us of the 2022 match against Spain. Thank God we won today. It's still Morocco. We'll reach the semi-finals, then the final to win the World Cup, God willing.
The players fought hard on the field, and praise be to God, their efforts have been rewarded with this win.
Long live the king, and may Morocco live forever.
Feeling pretty positive. Well, that's it for Eye on Africa, though. Thanks very much for joining us, and do so again if you can. Until then, take care.